Welcome to Drop Culture channel. It's been a minute, but today I want to talk about Uggs. Do you own a pair of Uggs? I own a pair of Uggs and they're pretty comfortable even if they're not the most stylish looking shoes. So what do Uggs have to do with culture and cultural appropriation and these conversations about culture and identity that I'm having on this channel? Well, Uggs is a brand name that we recognize in the United States for those warm shoes that you can wear the boots, really, I should say, that you can wear without socks. But the term Uggs in Australia is generic. What does that mean? It means it's not understood as something other than a descriptor, a category, like saying it's bread. So the Australians are not so happy that the word Uggs has been locked up by this American company. Uggs in the Australian context just refers to a particular kind of shoe or boot, and the term was coined, I believe, back in the 1960s. So it's kind of like someone having a trademark in Australia for bread. So there is a leather maker that sued the American company, saying that the term should not be locked up for trademark use. How did this happen? A trademark is assessed in its particular locality. So while Uggs might be generic in Australia, it's not generic in the United States because we don't use the word Uggs for anything. But even the Australian Prime Minister is saying that Uggs is a generic term. So this has to do with culture. How? Because the Australians are saying, hey, Uggs belongs to Australia. Like if the French can protect champagne, which was generic, the Portuguese have port, the Greeks have feta. These are all terms that are protected as geographic indications and someone else can't use them. How is that really any different from the Hawaiians saying, hey, you can't just use aloha for your aloha poke because that's part of Hawaiian culture. We have these words out there that are generic in a particular location, but now that we're operating in a very globalized environment, should it matter? Does it matter? Kim Kardashian got in trouble for calling her shapewear kimono originally. Kimono is a thing. It is a kind of dress, a Japanese dress. And the argument was that she was just using this cultural term. She was using something that described a particular cultural dress and using it as a trademark for her product, to use it as a source identifier. So this can be kind of tricky because, when it's kimono and it's Kim Kardashian, maybe it seems obvious, but we have the Australians saying, hey, Uggs isn't just part of American commerce, it's not just part of an American commercial identity, but it is a term that should be free for all Australians to use. And it's part of Australian cultural identity, effectively, is part of what the argument is, right? It's part of our lingo in Australia, is part of what the argument is. But trademark law doesn't operate that way. Unless Uggs is generic in the United States, it can be protected as a source identifier. We're going to increasingly see these cross-cultural clashes, perhaps, but I do want to point out that the Australian government is very correct in saying that the French were able to recover champagne. Note that we all call it sparkling wine now and not champagne anymore because it's not from the Champagne region of France. So what's the difference? What's the difference between an Ugg and a champagne? That's a question that I will address in my geographical indications video.